Okay, we're ready now to start talking about editing, and this isn't the most critical part of this presentation. However, when it comes to you guys making your own trailers, it's important to know that there's different ways to go between shot and shot. So editing is when you're putting together two different clips. So you filmed, you caught maybe Mr. Helfrich saying one thing, you push stop on the recording, and then you started filming Mrs. Schrader saying something else. You need a way to put those together so it's not just bounced right off each other. So there's a few types of editing, and these you'll all find in iMovie or any of your movie making software. The first is cut, the most common type, and it's just when you slice them right next to each other and you don't add anything. So if you put two clips back to back, that's called a cut edit, and it just goes from one straight to the other. You probably wouldn't even notice it. These other ones you will notice. Alternates rapidly from one shot to another is a crosscut, and that's when you can see two things maybe taking place simultaneously. So if you have maybe a phone call scene where one person's in the car calling somebody else who's not there, obviously, then on one side of the screen you'd see the dude in the car with the phone, and then maybe on the other side of the screen you'd see the chick he's calling back at her house. And you'd either see them both at the same time, or it would go back and forth so rapidly that you would know that they're having the conversation together. So
you could also use this if you were trying to show what two different people were doing at the exact same time. Would be another example of this.
So if we were making a movie of Night of the January 16th, perhaps we could use some cross-cutting to show what Karen was doing up in the bedroom, supposedly while she was waiting for the hour to happen with the dead body out in the garden, and Larry Reagan making it out to where his plane is missing, and so on. So we can see both of them. It's happening in reality at the same time, but obviously a screen can't show us two things at once, so it would be cutting back and forth. So that's cross-cutting. A fade in is when you see a screen go from black to the light of the scene. A fade out is the opposite, when you go from the scene and fade out. And it just shows us that something is beginning or something's ending. If you just go and watch one of your sitcoms or one of your television shows tonight and watch when it goes to commercial, chances are it will fade out. And when it gets back from the commercial, it will fade in. So it's very subtle. We're talking about a second or less of time, but it really does make a difference in kind of bringing closure to the scene. We talked about fade out. Now a wipe, I want you to use these very sparingly. When you make PowerPoints, we don't like those animations. When you make movies, we don't like wipe cuts, but it's when you can add an effect. You've seen maybe some slideshows where people put together a group of pictures and they use an effect that it looks like a page is turning. So one bottom of the bottom part of the screen kind of turns up and wipes to the next screen. In iMovie, there's a million different wipes you could use. Don't. Be very careful. You could make it look, like all you did was play around with the wipes and they're going to lose the content. For example, if you use, let's say, a star wipe on a scene to reveal the killer, that's going to distract from the meeting. So there are wipe edits you can use. Some of them could be used very powerfully. However, a lot of times, especially if you don't have a lot of experience with it, you could kind of miss the message of your show. So those are the different types of edits. Okay, we also want to talk about sound, and I really implore all of you when you're filming your movies and trailers to really pay attention to the sound, because that's going to be the part that we have the most trouble with, mostly because of our equipment that we have here. We don't have the external microphones, but we can do our best to make it sound good. So there's lots of different types of sound. The first is a voiceover, and some of you did these on your commercials for your persuasion project, but a voiceover is when you don't have a character standing on the screen, but we hear his voice. So it's kind of like that God-like character who you hear someone speaking. If we are making a movie or a trailer for Night of the January 16th, all those italics at the beginning, like at the beginning of Act 1, that explains kind of where we are, that would be a good example of a voiceover. Maybe we're seeing a picture of the courthouse or an overview of all the people sitting in the audience and Karen sitting at her chair. We don't hear those people talking, but we hear the main booming voice over all of it explaining what we're seeing. So voiceovers can be used and are used a lot in trailers just to explain what's going on.
This could also be an example of a voiceover, could be when we hear a character's thoughts that they aren't exactly saying out loud, but they have some sort of thought in their head, and that's how we know what the thought is. For example, if they want to do some sort of flashback to something that had happened to them previously, they could possibly be thinking, well, I remember the time that blah, 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 and that would be done in a voiceover rather than them actually talking out loud in the scene.
Great. Okay, so voiceovers are used a lot. I could imagine if we're making a Most Dangerous Game that there would be a lot of voiceovers because Rainsford's not going to be talking out loud when he's hiding in the jungle, but he is thinking all those thoughts, so a voiceover could be used there. Okay, the opposite then of voiceover is dialogue. That's when you have two people on the screen talking to each other. You guys are used to this all the time. It's what you see most of the time, but it's just something to know the difference between a voiceover and dialogue. Now we're getting into the really technical stuff, but you're going to sound like a super smart filmmaker after you learn this. Of course, there's music added into trailers and movies all the time, and there's different types of sound, diegetic and non-diegetic. Okay? Diegetic simply means sound that was there when you filmed it. Okay, so if you're filming in a car, your buddies are riding down the road and you're filming, and the radio's on, that would be diegetic sound. Non-diegetic is sounds that are added after the fact. So many of the times movie trailers, we're watching all the action happen and you're hearing that kind of theme song. The theme song wasn't happening when they're in the forest running away, but it's added to add that experience and bring that emotion to it, because you all know after writing your song papers how important music is to adding emotion and life to different pieces. So if you add music to your trailer that wasn't there when you filmed it, that would just be called non-diegetic sound. If you were filming and there was music playing in the background, that would be diegetic. Same thing goes for sound effects. And in iMovie, there's lots of different sound effects you could add in. Remember, when you add them in, that's non-diegetic. If they were there to begin with, that it's diegetic. So if you were filming a car chase and you really wanted to get those tires screeching, you would want to make sure they actually squeal those tires. Otherwise, it would be non-diegetic and you'd have to add it in after the fact. Interesting side note, because I love adding those in. I don't know if we've seen Jurassic Park. I assume that you have. But the sound of the Tyrannosaurus Rex roaring, if you will, which to me was terrifying, was actually the sound of a train screeching to a halt. So the sounds that are made non-diegetically don't actually have to be, they didn't film a Tyrannosaurus Rex roaring. You can be very creative in how you can get those sounds. So think outside the box. Okay, here's just a quick example. This is from the movie Gladiator. I've just kind of highlighted here the different types of sounds. So they've added in the music. This music was not playing with this gladiator standing in the field. And depending or not, if it was really that windy, they might want to add in that wind. Or it could have been windy while they were filming it, so it would have been diegetic. There wasn't a woman singing. Again, they added that in, non-diegetic. Now the horse whinnies, again, they may have been there, however, they might have added it in also, depending on what their cameras picked up. Okay, I think you get the gist of that. Just really pay attention to your sound as you're filming. All right, lighting. Lighting is also a very important element, and again, something that we don't have the best equipment to utilize, but if you pay attention to it, you're going to notice a huge difference in your trailer. So we're going to watch this video, and it's going to show us some different aspects of lighting. Okay, so here we have our lighting examples. Clearly, I did not make this movie. Thank you, YouTube. So directional lighting. There's different directions. So front lighting is when you want to expose an entire subject. This is probably what you're going to be using the most. It's just when the light comes from the front. So you can just see that there. Now, notice how the details are a little bit lost. We can't necessarily see the perfect sharpness of their faces and so on with this type of lighting that you might with some of the other examples we're seeing. Side lighting, so it does bring out the texture. It adds shadows, makes things look more three-dimensional. Wow, YouTube people, let's spell three-dimensional correctly, please. And cons, it's generally cast in darkness, so you're not going to be able to see one side of it. Notice where's the light coming from on this one? It's coming from the right, and there's shadows on the left-hand side of their face. Okay, so a little bit more dramatic here. And shows us a lot of one side, but they do look more three-dimensional, not as flat as that first screen. Backlighting, so it's used to create silhouettes, so the front of their faces are going to be pretty dark. Creates a bright ring around your object that separates it from the background, and like I said, the foreground or the front things that you want to see is going to be undershown. So notice we don't even see the beak on the black pen there, but it makes the white pen look even angelic. So you can create some mood that way. So lighting, an important part of your piece. Easy things to do. Take lamps in your room if you're filming. Turn the lights off and go next to a window. You really have to be creative and think outside the box and think about how you can use lighting and things such as this to make dramatic effects in your trailer. Because remember, the entire point of a trailer is to build suspense and get those viewers to come pay money to watch your movie.